My stepson sent me a cold text telling me not to come to family lunch because his wife didn't want me there. I didn't argue or beg. I quietly canceled every bill, payment, and favor I'd been covering for them. By the next morning, he was standing at my doorstep, panicked and desperate, not knowing that what I just set in motion would expose exactly why they wanted me out and how badly they'd underestimated me. Before I tell you everything, do me a small favor. Subscribe to the channel, tap like if you've ever been taken for granted, and comment the city you're watching from. It helps stories like mine reach the people who need to hear them. My name is Harold Whitman. I'm 71 years old, retired, and until recently, I believe loyalty was something you earned by showing up. I learned the hard way that for some people, loyalty is something they calculate, based on what you provide, not who you are. I married Eleanor Whitman when her son Lucas was 14. I wasn't his father, never tried to be. I was the man who stayed, the man who helped with homework, fixed broken bikes, sat through long silences when a teenage boy didn't know how to talk about grief or anger. Over time, Lucas softened. He trusted me. When Eleanor passed away 6 years ago, he hugged me and said, "You're all I have now." I took that promise seriously. When Lucas married Amanda 3 years ago, I welcomed her without hesitation. She was confident, organized, very clear about what she wanted from life. I admired that at first. When they struggled early on, I helped. Quietly. No contracts, no speeches. Just support. I paid deposits, covered utilities, handled insurance gaps. I told myself that's what family does. But things shifted. Slowly enough that I almost missed it. Amanda started talking about space and boundaries. She joked about my house being too big for one man. Asked questions about my retirement plans, my investments, what I intended to do. Eventually, Lucas's calls became shorter, more transactional. When I saw them, conversations felt rushed, like I was an obligation they needed to manage. Still, I kept paying. Then came the text. No greeting. No explanation. Just a directive. Don't come. She doesn't want you there. I sat at my kitchen table for a long time after reading it. Not angry. Not hurt. Just clear. Clear that the respect I thought existed was conditional. Clear that my presence was welcome only when it was profitable. I didn't reply. Instead, I opened my laptop and logged into my accounts. I reviewed every recurring payment tied to Lucas and Amanda, utilities, insurance, monthly transfers, the credit card I'd given Lucas just in case. One by one, I shut them down. Calmly, methodically, no drama, no announcement. That night, my phone lit up. First Amanda, polite messages about possible errors. Then Lucas, confused texts that quickly turned frantic, calls I didn't answer, voicemails stacking up. I slept better than I had in months. At 8 the next morning, there was a knock. Lucas stood on my porch, eyes red, clothes wrinkled like he dressed in a rush. Amanda sat in their car, arms crossed, staring straight ahead. She didn't wave. She didn't get out. "Can we talk?" Lucas asked. I stepped aside. He didn't sit. He paced. The payment stopped. Everything stopped. The bills. "I know," I said. He froze, like the possibility that I'd done it on purpose had never occurred to him. "That lunch," I continued. "The message. You didn't think that had consequences?" He opened his mouth, closed it again. Amanda was stressed. She didn't mean... "I wasn't asking what she meant," I said. "I was paying attention to what you did." He finally sat down, hand shaking. "We were counting on that money." That sentence told me everything. Not, "I'm sorry." Not, "we hurt you." Just expectation, assumption, entitlement. "I've supported you for years," I said calmly. I didn't mind helping. What I won't do is fund a life where I'm treated like an inconvenience. He looked toward the window, toward the car. "She thinks you're trying to control us." "I'm controlling my own finances," I replied. "There's a difference." Silence stretched between us. "I need you to go," I said finally, "and think about what kind of relationship you want. Because if it's only built on what I pay, then there isn't one." He left without arguing. That afternoon, I made a list. Every transfer, every bill, every favor. The total made my stomach tighten. I also called my attorney and scheduled a meeting. Not because I wanted to fight, but because I was done being unprotected. I wasn't seeking revenge. I was reclaiming control. And Lucas and Amanda had no idea how much they were about to reveal trying to get it back. This was only the first step. By the time Lucas drove away that morning, I wasn't shaky anymore. The fear, the doubt, the instinct to second-guess myself, all of that had burned off. What remained was something steadier. Resolve. I closed the door, locked it, and stood in my hallway for a long moment, listening to the quiet. For years, that silence had felt lonely. That day, it felt protective. My phone buzzed again before noon. Amanda this time. No greeting. There's a problem with the utilities. The electric company says the account was closed. I didn't answer. Another message followed almost immediately. Harold, this isn't funny. Lucas is panicking. I stared at the screen, noticing the shift. Not concern. Not apology. Pressure. By evening, the tone changed again. Can we please talk like adults? This is unnecessary drama. I turned my phone face down and poured myself a glass of water. Drama, I thought. That's what accountability feels like to people who've never had it. The next day, I met with my attorney, Gerald Knox. I'd known Gerald for more than 20 years. He'd handled my estate planning after Eleanor passed and had warned me, gently, that blended families sometimes get complicated when money enters the picture. This time, I didn't sugarcoat anything. I laid out the timeline, the payments, the text message, the sudden urgency once the money stopped. Gerald listened, pen still, eyes sharp. This isn't uncommon, he said finally. What concerns me is the entitlement and the timing. He explained my options. Asset protection, updated documents, clear boundaries. He asked a question that stuck with me. Do you trust them not to escalate? I didn't answer right away. I don't know, I said honestly. Then we plan as if they will. By the end of the meeting, my will had been revised, power of attorney updated, a trust structure drafted that prevented anyone from accessing my assets without oversight. It felt strange, like locking doors I never thought I'd need to, but also necessary. That night, Lucas called again. I let it ring. The following afternoon, Amanda showed up alone. She knocked twice. When I opened the door, she smiled like nothing was wrong, like she hadn't just tried to erase me from my own family. May I come in? She asked. I stepped aside but didn't invite her to sit. She took in the living room, the photos on the wall. Eleanor, Lucas as a teenager, old holidays, and sighed dramatically. I hate conflict, she began. Especially family conflict. I waited. We're under a lot of stress, she continued. And when people feel judged, they react. That lunch thing, it was about needing space. You asked me not to come. I said evenly, that's not space. That's exclusion. She waved it off. Words get taken the wrong way. Money doesn't, I replied. Her smile tightened. She changed tactics. Talked about their future. About plans. About how hard it was for young couples to get ahead. Then she glanced around my house. This place is a lot for one person, she said casually. Have you ever thought about downsizing? Something more manageable? There it was. I'm very comfortable. I said, of course, she replied quickly. I just worry about you being alone. And you know, eventually Lucas will inherit everything. It might make sense to start planning now. I felt something cold settle in my chest. Not anger, not surprise, recognition. I think you should leave, I said. Her eyes flashed. Harold, don't be dramatic. I'm not, I replied. I'm being clear. She stood, face hard now. You're making a mistake. No, I said, I'm correcting one. After she left, I wrote down everything she'd said while it was fresh. Gerald's voice echoed in my head. Document everything. 2 days later, I got a call from Laura Myers, the forensic accountant Gerald had recommended. I'd agreed to have her review the financial support I'd given Lucas and Amanda, mostly for my own clarity. Harold, she said carefully. There are inconsistencies you should see. When I met her the next morning, she laid out the numbers. The mortgage payments I'd been covering were higher than their actual mortgage. The car expenses I'd paid weren't necessary. Those costs had already been reimbursed through Lucas's business. The emergency funds? Redirected to discretionary spending. They weren't drowning, she said. They were supplementing. I drove home in silence. That evening, Lucas showed up again. This time, no car waiting. No Amanda in sight. I messed up, he said quietly. I studied his face, searching for something real. Why now? I asked. He hesitated. Because things are falling apart. Not because he'd hurt me. Not because he'd crossed a line. Because the money was gone. I love you, he said. I believe that, I replied. But love without respect is just another transaction. He didn't argue. As he walked away, I realized something important. They hadn't wanted me gone because I was interfering. They wanted me gone because I was inconvenient to the story they were telling themselves. And the harder they tried to fix things, the more that story I could see. They thought this was about money. They were wrong. It was about control. And they were losing it. By the start of the third week, the pressure changed shape. It stopped sounding like confusion and started sounding like strategy. The first sign was a silence. No calls, no texts, no unexpected visits. That kind of quiet isn't peace. It's preparation. I'd seen it before in business negotiations. When the noise stops, it means the other side is deciding how far they're willing to go. Gerald called me early one morning. They've been asking questions, he said. Not directly. Through people. What kind of questions? About your health. Your memory. Whether anyone's noticed changes. I closed my eyes and let that sink in. So that's the angle? Yes, he replied. And I want you to hear this clearly. It's not uncommon for financial pressure to turn into credibility attacks. If they can make you look unreliable, everything you say becomes suspect. I thanked him and hung up, then sat at my kitchen table staring at the same sunlight that had warmed that room for years. I felt a flicker of fear, brief, sharp, but it didn't take hold. I wasn't confused. I wasn't fragile. And I wasn't alone anymore. That afternoon, I went to my doctor for a routine visit I'd already had scheduled. When I told him what was happening, he didn't hesitate. I'll document everything, he said. Your cognitive tests, your medical history, all of it. If anyone tries to claim otherwise, they'll have a problem. That night, Laura Myers sent me her full report. It was thorough. Dates, amounts, patterns. The total support I provided was higher than I'd even realized, and the way it had been used told a clear story, not desperation. Design. The next day, Amanda resurfaced, this time indirectly. A neighbor mentioned she'd stopped by asking whether I'd been forgetting things lately. Another acquaintance reached out with concern, carefully phrased. I thanked him politely and made notes. Every comment went into a file. When Lucas finally called, his voice was different, measured, careful. Someone told me you've been telling people we took advantage of you, he said. I've been telling professionals the truth. I replied, there's a difference. That could really hurt us, he said. It already has, I said calmly. Just not the way you mean. He paused. Amanda thinks you're being influenced. By facts. I asked, yes. The line went quiet. 2 days later, Gerald called again. They filed a report, he said. Adult Protective Services. Claiming concern. My stomach tightened, but only briefly. Good, I said. Good. Yes, I replied. It means they've overreached. The investigator arrived that Friday. Professional, neutral, thorough. She asked questions, reviewed documents, ran basic assessments. I answered calmly, clearly. When she finished, she closed her folder. Mr. Whitman, she said, you're clearly capable of managing your affairs. And I'll be honest, the pattern here suggests someone else is trying to gain control. I watched her drive away and felt something shift inside me. Relief, yes, but also confirmation. The line had been crossed, and it wasn't by me. That evening, Lucas showed up again. Alone. No Amanda. No excuses rehearsed in advance. She thinks you're trying to punish us, he said quietly. I'm protecting myself, I replied. Those aren't the same thing. He sat heavily on the couch, staring at the floor. I didn't think it would go this far. It always does, I said, when people feel entitled to something that isn't theirs. He rubbed his face. What do you want? I thought about that. Truly thought about it. I want distance, I said. I want time. And I want you to decide who you are, without anyone else whispering in your ear. He nodded slowly. And Amanda? That's your choice, I said. But choices have consequences. He stood to leave, stopping at the door. She says you're trying to control us. I met his eyes. If I were trying to control you, I'd still be paying. He didn't respond. After he left, I locked the door and poured myself a cup of tea. Outside, the street was quiet. Inside, my house felt solid again, mine, in a way it hadn't for a long time. They thought the worst thing I could do was cut them off. They hadn't realized the worst thing for them was that I'd finally started paying attention. And once attention turns into evidence, there's no going back. The Adult Protective Services report didn't go the way Amanda had hoped. Instead of painting me as confused or vulnerable, it documented something very different. A man in full control of his finances who had been systematically pressured, misled, and manipulated. Gerald received a copy before I did, and when he called, his voice was steady but satisfied. They didn't just fail, he said. They left fingerprints. That mattered, because once people put false claims in writing, they stop being opinions and start being evidence. The silence returned after that. Not the tense, strategic quiet from before, but something closer to retreat. Amanda stopped calling entirely. Lucas sent one short message saying he needed time. I didn't reply. For the first time since Eleanor passed, I let myself step back without guilt. A week later, Gerald suggested mediation. Not because you owed him anything, he said, but because it puts everything on record. Witnesses, terms, boundaries. I agreed. The meeting was scheduled at a neutral office downtown. Gerald would be there, a mediator, and if Lucas and Amanda were smart, their own attorney. Whether they were smart enough was another question. They arrived late. Lucas looked exhausted. Amanda looked controlled. Too controlled. That brittle calm people adopt when they think confidence can substitute for leverage. The mediator laid out the ground rules. Everyone speaks respectfully. Everything is documented. The goal is resolution. Gerald presented first. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't accuse. He laid out facts. Payments made. Lies attached to those payments. Attempts to isolate me. The exclusion text. The sudden escalation once money stopped. The false report filed with APS. Then he played the recording I had made during Amanda's last visit. The moment where she talked openly about inheritance, downsizing my home, and planning ahead without my consent. The room changed. Amanda's attorney shifted uncomfortably. Lucas stared at the table. Amanda crossed her arms tighter. When it was their turn, Amanda spoke first. She's twisting everything, she said sharply. We asked for help. That's it. Families help each other. Families don't lie about why they need money, Gerald replied. And they don't try to remove someone from the picture when the money stops. Amanda snapped back, emotion finally breaking through. He doesn't need all of it. He's alone. We're trying to build a future. That was the moment Lucas finally looked up. Amanda, he said quietly, stop. She turned on him. This is your fault. You should have handled him. The mediator held up a hand. That's enough. Lucas spoke then, voice barely above a whisper. I let this happen. I knew it felt wrong, and I didn't stop it. No one interrupted him. I told myself it was temporary, that we'd fix it later. But every time he gave us money, it got easier to ask again, easier to justify. He looked at me, eyes wet. I'm sorry. It wasn't the apology I'd waited for, but it was the first honest thing I'd heard. The settlement was simple. No contact for 1 year. No requests. No financial involvement. No claims about my health or capacity. Everything in writing. Violations would reopen the door to civil action. Amanda didn't look at me when she signed. Lucas hesitated, then signed anyway. Afterward, as we stood to leave, he lingered near the door. "You were always there," he said quietly. "I forgot that meant something." I nodded. "You forgot because someone convinced you it was optional." Outside, the air felt lighter. The fallout came quickly. Word travels fast when money disappears and explanations don't hold. Lucas's business partner withdrew. Their house went on the market. Amanda's social circle thinned once it became clear the lifestyle had been subsidized. I watched all of it from a distance. Not with satisfaction, with acceptance. This wasn't about payback. It was about finally stepping out of a role I'd never agreed to play. I went home, locked my door, and sat in Eleanor's old chair. For the first time in a long while, I didn't feel like I was waiting for the next demand. Whatever came next would come on my terms. And that changed everything. The year of no contact did something I didn't expect. It didn't make me lonely. It made me lighter. For the first few weeks, I kept waiting for familiar anxiety, the sense that I should be doing something, fixing something, rescuing someone. But nothing came. No calls. No emergencies. No sudden financial disasters that somehow require my involvement. Just quiet mornings, long walks through Hawthorne Ridge, and evenings where I read without checking my phone every 5 minutes. Lucas tried once more about 3 months in. A handwritten letter. No email. No text. He wrote about therapy. About how uncomfortable it was to hear himself say things out loud that he'd buried for years. About how Amanda blamed everyone except herself, and how that had finally scared him more than losing money ever did. He didn't ask for help. He didn't mention bills. He just said he was trying to understand how he'd become someone who could push the only father figure he'd ever known out his life. I didn't reply. Not because I didn't care, but because growth doesn't happen when consequences are softened. Amanda filed for divorce not long after. Gerald told me matter-of-factly, the way lawyers do when emotions aren't the point. She claimed misrepresentation, unrealized expectations, emotional distress. None of it held much weight without the financial support that had once propped up their image. The house sold at a loss. The cars went back. The life she'd imagined shrank quickly. Lucas moved into a small apartment on the edge of Brookfield. He took a job well below what he'd once bragged about, and for the first time in years, lived within his means. From what I heard, never from him directly. He showed up on time, worked hard, and kept his head down. That mattered more to me than any apology. As for me, I did something I should have done years earlier. I redesigned my life without asking anyone's permission. I joined a small group at the Brookfield Senior Commons. Men and women my age who'd been quietly cast aside once their usefulness ran out. We didn't complain. We compared notes. We laughed more than I expected. I volunteered with a local organization that helps seniors understand their finances, not because I wanted to relive my experience, but because too many people never realize what's happening until it's almost too late. I updated my estate plans again, not out of anger, but clarity. My assets were protected. My wishes documented. Nothing left open to interpretation. On my 72nd birthday, I didn't receive a big gift or a dramatic gesture. I received a simple card from Lucas. No return address. I'm learning how to stand on my own. It read, I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know I finally understand what you gave and what I took for granted. I placed the card on my shelf beside a photo of Eleanor. Not as closure, as acknowledgement. Some people think stories like mine end with reconciliation or triumph. They don't always. Sometimes they end with boundaries, with distance, with a quiet understanding that love doesn't mean surrender, and family doesn't mean access. I didn't win anything. I reclaimed myself, and that at 71 was worth more than every bill I ever paid for someone who didn't respect me. If my story struck a chord with you, if you've ever felt pushed aside, used, or made to feel small while still being expected to give, take a moment before you go. Subscribe to the channel, share where you're watching from, and leave a comment. Stories like this reach the right people when they're heard at the right time. Thank you for listening.